Hello and welcome. I mean, I always do it wrong because I should start all of these out by saying, Holy Happy Hour, Batman. It is Friday at 5, and this is the second ever episode of our Happy Hour show. I'm Father Ben. I'm an Episcopal priest, gamer, streamer, podcast host, and co-founder of the All Ports Open Network. On this show, I'm going to be joined by heroes of the gaming and geek world to talk about life, faith, spirituality, and whatever else comes up. So I'm really excited about this week's episode. And so I got a couple of things to share with you before we get started here. Today on the show, I'm going to be joined by special guest, Zach Garth. He's the host of the podcasts Heart Points and Chasing Chocobos and other podcasts he's done in the past. He's the designer of games like Tiny God, which is a mindfulness micro game. We're really excited to have Zach on the show. He'll be here with us in about a half an hour. Before that, though, first, I'm going to be joined by another podcast host and game designer who happens to have known me longer than pretty much anyone else alive that's not my blood family. Blaine Martin is going to be here with us in just a few moments. But before we get to all of that, it is happy hour. And so I'm planning to start each week on this show out by sharing some cocktail recipes themed around my guests. So I've got 3 drinks I want to share with you today. All 3 of these drinks feature spirits from my local Philadelphia favorite, New Liberty Distillery, right here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is where I live. I'm right outside West Philadelphia in the suburbs. And so we've got 3 drinks that I want to share with you here because it's happy hour. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm excited about the first one. You know, I will actually save, so I'll save the one. All right, I'm going to start with the 2 drinks I named after the Heart Points podcast. First being the drink Heart Points. You can see it on the screen right there. And this is featuring this gin call it Snug Harbor Gin from New Liberty Distillery. And you can see that it was, so I wanted to try to make a pink shade cocktail, which I pretty much was able to accomplish. This is a pretty, if you like gin and flowery taste, this one's very floral and really yummy. And so that one's the heart points. But then I really wanted to make a drink and actually started by making a cocktail themed around the current arc that the show Heart Points is doing. Heart Points is a actual play show that uses Dungeon World and other games. Zach and Diana are a husband and wife who play together. It's a 2-person RPG actual play. And they are currently doing an arc called Blood Gold. So I wanted to make a Blood Gold recipe, which I did. I'm going to share that one with you now. So I wanted a drink that would be gold in color, but have some blood mixed in. So I created this drink, which you can see on your screen. And the thing about this drink is it's basically another cocktail called the Gold Rush, which I started out with as my base. And then I used a bunch of these liqueurs that you can see from New Liberty Distillery, a really rare one called Creme de Violette. It's a pretty rare spirit that you may never have heard of, and a sour cherry liqueur, and some lush grenadine. And I kind of drizzled those over the very gold colored drink to like add some blood. So that's the Blood Gold. And then themed on, so I said that Blaine Martin's going to be on the show here in a second. He's in my digital green room listening to all this. I talked to him extensively about what a You Are Not Alone cocktail would taste like. Now, You Are Not Alone is his podcast. It's a horror podcast. I've known Blaine, as I said, for a very long time, and I really wanted to get the right drink. And I also was limited by what I had to work with. So this is the cocktail we came up with. It's called the You Are Not Alone. And I use for this, as my base, this bourbon. Now it's going to be reversed on your screen, I'm sure, but this is called the Bloody Butcher bourbon, which is, if there's not a more perfect horror bourbon name than Bloody Butcher bourbon whiskey, I don't know what it could possibly be. But this is Bloody Butcher bourbon, aged for 2 years. This bourbon is extremely American, all bourbon really is, I guess, but extremely Philly, as they like to try to do. It's sort of rooted in local bourbon tradition here, local whiskey tradition in Pennsylvania. That's a long history I won't get into right now. It's very earthy. And so we combined that, as you can see in the cocktail, with other earthy flavors, with the Fernet Michaud, with the cinnamon syrup, with the ginger beer, and actually I have it right here. And I can tell you it's really good. And I encourage you to try it. So what I'm going to do is, I forgot to do this last week when I had the really incredible guest, Alex Roberts, on the show. I forgot to take the cocktail I had made for that episode and get it out there to you all afterwards. So what I want to do is find a way to share all these with you all so that you can try to make them later if you so choose. So let me just get rid of these now. Get rid of this so that way I can bring on my guest. So as I said, I'm really excited to be joined by Blaine Martin, and with the magic of the internet, I'm going to make him appear here right now. There he is. Hey, Blaine, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I am trying my hardest not to say hello and welcome to You Are Not Alone.
You can say it, but it won't be accurate, but you can say it.
I mean, it's it is what it is. Anyway, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. It's Friday. It's after 5.
It is.
I can't really complain. I've got this bottle of whiskey in front of me, and I've got a cocktail that I made over here on the left. And so what is there really to complain about?
It's true. I mean, the You Are Not Alone cocktail really should have been just crack open a can of PBR, but that is that's a cop out in today's day and age.
Yeah. So, well, I did think about making the You Are Not Alone cocktail. I really seriously considered just making it like a whiskey in one hand and a tall boy of PBR in the other hand, because then you're not alone. You've got 2 drinks. Like, neither of them is alone.
And it is, 100% the most accurate way to capture me in a cocktail.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Now, so here's the thing: if I ever stream this happy hour stream long enough, and I ever have enough of these recipes to like compile a recipe book, I'll just do an alternative You Are Not Alone, and it will just be that. It'll just be
citywide special, baby.
basically. So that's the thing. I can't really steal the. If you're not from Philly, do other cities do that?
I don't know. That is the thing. If people are listening from another city, if your city does a citywide special in Philadelphia, it's generally a can of PBR and whatever their well whiskey is.
Mm-hmm.
Some like I know a lot of like Diego's in media and other Mexican restaurants will often do like a Corona or a Tecate in whatever their well tequila is, but the traditional is PBR or like Yingling Gold, and whatever the cheapest bourbon they have is. So if your city does that, I would love to hear. It's a kind of fascinating drink piece of trivia.
It is. The only fact we have in the chat right now is if you want to become famous, you can buy followers and viewers from that bot. Big follows. Space.
Well, let me click that.
Com.
Click that link right now.
Awesome. Well, one of the downsides to streaming a happy hour stream on the East Coast is that it's not happy hour other places, and we are competing here with the fact that people are still coming home from work, and the fact that we kind of built into this to Holy Happy Hour Batman. So
but we're living in COVID times, so if someone's having happy hour at 2 p.m., I'm not going to judge.
That's right. Oh yeah, no judgment for whatever, for sure, especially right now. So yeah, so Blaine, so I've said I told everyone that you've known me for a long time. That's true.
It is disgustingly true.
Like over 20 years, right?
Yes, I think 21. So our friendship can now legally buy alcohol.
Wow, that's special. It seems appropriate for our friendship and for this stream. And we also, I didn't say this either. I didn't even cross my mind to say it till right this moment. But Blaine and I we work together at church.
We do.
Church. So there's that. But I wanted you to come on because you're friends with the other guest who's coming on, Zach, and also because you are a podcaster with your podcast, You Are Not Alone, horror podcast, and you're a game designer. So for folks who don't know your work, what are some games that you have designed that are out there?
So the first game I published is a game called Born of Briar in Blood, it was a finalist in the, I think, 2017 200-word RPG contest, and then a full version of it was published in Gauntlet Codex Hunger. Mm-hmm. And it is a game about folk creatures in a modernizing world who have to compete for the belief of the village that they're folk creatures of. I also have a scenario for Lovecraft-esque that I wrote with Jeff Stormer of the Party of One podcast, based on the episode of You Are Not Alone that we did together. It is a pro wrestling themed Lovecraft-esque scenario that is available on Jeff Stormer's itch.io. And as part of the business card jam recently on itch.io, I published a micro game called Your Skeleton Wants to Escape. Mm-hmm. It started as a mindfulness game, and I think it is still technically a mindfulness game, but it is a game about imagining your skeleton trying to escape your body.
It's really interesting that both the guests this week have created micro games that are like basically mindfulness games, and they also couldn't really be much more different than each other.
It is, and I love that Zach and I are on this together, because when I sat down to design Your Skeleton Wants to Escape, I really legitimately had all of the best intentions of designing like a Tiny God style game. And then it turned into Your Skeleton Wants to Escape, which is not... I still feel bad that game exists. I think it's a very good game, but it's horrifying.
Yeah, well, horrifying. I haven't actually... I should sit down and actually play it. I should actually do it. I have only read it. I have not actually tried it. So I should do that. But I want to talk a little bit about Born of Briar and Blood, because... So here's what I was thinking about when you were talking about it. and I've been thinking about this over the last week. So last week I had Alex Roberts on, and it was the first of these streams. And since then I've been lining up other guests that are going to come on the show. And I'm really excited. I have some really cool guests down the line that I'm just really wowed about the fact that are going to come on the show. But one of the things, like, you know, obviously folks who are watching this probably know or can get a hint from this thing around my neck that, like, I'm an Episcopal priest. And that can be, the idea of a priest or even just a public Christian could be, it can kind of like give people a certain impression. And so sometimes I'm like overly sensitive and hyper aware of what impression people might have of this before I give that person a chance to have their own impression, which is on me. I really got to, you know, think about that a little bit. One of the things that's been fascinating to me as I've been doing this and talking to people is like there is such an incredible breadth of spiritual experience and tradition and spirituality out there among people who design games and who are in the RPG world, who spend all their time in this world. And like, it's like, now I'm like, oh, well, of course on so many levels. I mean, one, there's the thing we talked about last week, which is like the fact that there is common between religion and RPG. There is this idea of shared ritual, shared story, community building, all these things that are like in common. A lot of people design games to be related to meaning making, but like, it's like, of course, because like mythology and like all this stuff has been, religion has, and there's just the simple fact that religion has existed in role-playing games since there was role-playing games, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, you know, Gygax started creating mythologies and borrowing some from real world. It's always interesting to look at like early Dungeons and Dragons books and like the fact that there are like very obviously fictionalized gods that Gary Gygax created, but then like gods that other people have created, and then like real world gods, and like particularly like Irish mythology and like those kinds of very fantastical faiths have played a large part in kind of fantasy in general for forever.
Yeah. So it's my own sensitivity to that, not the reality. It's really interesting to just talk to people and like to have people want to have these kinds of conversations. But anyway, that was all to set up talking about Born of Briar and Blood, because here's a perfect example of a game about, is it fair to say it's like a game about religion? I mean, certainly there is a religious core to the game. It's yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it is definitely, I mean, it's inspired by religion. Particularly the way, and it's interesting for me as someone who identifies as a Christian to write a game about how Christianity erased a lot of other faiths, but it largely plays into a lot of that concept of like how as societies became more Christianized, how their old faiths started to dwindle and, you know, become mythologies essentially. And that idea of like how old faiths still scrape by today.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I think even in modern Christianity, we're seeing a lot of that too, as a lot of people, there's a diaspora away from Christianity in a lot of communities. And I guess that's partially just the ebb and flow of faiths in general. But that idea of what happens to faiths as society changes is, you know, the central tenet of that game. It's the question the game asks.
Yeah, can you just say that again?
The what happens to faith as society changes.
Interesting. So I'm just curious as to like, was there anything, you have an interesting personal spiritual journey, right? I mean, I've been along for a huge part of it. It's one that went like through, is it okay if we talk about this? I don't want
yeah, certainly.
It's one that went through Quakerism into, I don't know, how would you self-describe now? You said just as a Christian, but
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm part of the Episcopal Church, and I definitely like the Episcopal Church is, you know, right up there with the Quaker Church as like the two kind of Christian faiths I most agree with. And I think generally I say Episcopalian, because so much of my life is rooted in that.
Right.
But generally, I like when I think of myself as a Christian who aligns more with the Episcopal Church than any other church out there. But like there are certainly like my journey is a weird one, and my faith is kind of a weird one. So I don't know if it's not a perfect fit, but it's as close as I'm gonna get.
Okay, so for some reason our faces went away on the stream.
Oh, interesting.
Folks can still hear us though. Hold on, I'll fix it. Now this might be the weirdest glitch I've had streaming yet. I don't even know how it happened. All right, let's see if I can fix it. It must have to do with the. Okay. Sorry, folks. We're here having this conversation. We're still here, I promise. Whoa, this is weird. This is a weird one.
OBX is doing you wrong.
Apparently, using Zoom has worked until right now. Okay. Oh yeah, here we go. I think I got it back. Well, I thought I did. Yeah. Wait, what? No, that's not it. I'm so sorry, folks. You know what? Why don't we I'm going to just say we'll be right back. I'm going to try to fix this. I apologize for this, folks. I'm going to transition it. We'll just put up a be right back screen. I'll try to fix it. And then we'll be right back momentarily. I do promise for that. All right, we are back, and we are actually back as it looks like here.
Ooh.
Yeah, there we are. We're
Yay.
back. Thank you all for. We got more people when we came back than when we left, so that's a good sign.
Didn't scare anyone off.
Sorry about that. And look, we came back with. Speaking of coming back with more people, I meant we also have Zach. So we have both more people in the stream, and we've got Zach with us. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. I am very glad that it is Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I need it to be the weekend very badly. So I'm doing well now that it is 5:30 on Friday.
There you go. Exactly. I feel the same way. Although I've got a pretty crazy weekend myself. We won't get into all of that. But so I told everybody about you when you weren't here yet. So everyone is now primed and ready to hear you. We actually didn't talk all about you. I just sort of talked about heart points, talked about Tiny God a tiny bit. We want to talk a little bit more about that. And you missed, I featured some cocktails themed around. One is the heart points cocktail. And one, yeah, I stole your IP. And one is the blood gold cocktail.
Oh, I need to know what those are. I'm very fascinated.
I will send
need
those
to try
recipe.
those.
Yeah, I'll send those recipe cards your way, and I'll share them with everybody listening, watching the stream again after we're done. I'll get them out there.
I know that there was an unofficial official Heart Points cocktail, or it was maybe the Segaranza cocktail in a bar in Philly that I never
that's
got
right.
a chance to go try, and it made me so sad.
Yeah, that was what Dev Preston's bar, right? He created a cocktail for y'all.
Oh, that's so cool. Is it no longer a thing, or is it just because of COVID times, or what?
Just because of COVID, I have a really difficult time leaving the house before the COVID times.
Yeah.
And now that it's COVID and baby times, I'm just probably never going to leave the house ever again.
Okay.
I'm trapped in this tiny room.
Speaking of tiny things, tiny God, tiny room. That'll be your next micro game.
Yeah, tiny room.
Tiny room. So, okay, we were actually having a pretty fruitful conversation before we vanished.
I honestly don't. It was so long ago. I don't remember.
It was. Well, we were talking about religion. We were talking about the religion behind sort of Born in Briar and Blood, and sort of your own personal spirituality that kind of led to that game design. Is I think what we were talking about.
That's right. Yeah, and just the idea of how religions change as society changes.
Yeah. So now that we got Zach here, I'm curious, Zach, if you want to tell us a little bit about sort of your spiritual journey. We talked a little bit about Blaine's. I'm curious about your own spiritual journey, and then I'd love to get into a little bit about how that impacts things like, because I know the cultural elements of your world design for like the podcast are really important to you, and I see you talking about that stuff, and then like also the game design. But yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit about how you like your personal spiritual journey, just spend the next half an hour. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I really could is the thing. It was
of course.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start.
Can I ask you a question then? Did you grow up in a religious household?
No. I grew up in a I guess a very non-committal Protestant household. We were and my mother was
Episcopalian, were you?
No.
Because usually that's who it is. If you grow up in a non-committal Protestant household, it's usually us. Anyway.
No, we were nothing, basically. My mother kept trying to like help us to find a church. At one point when we lived in Texas, we attended a Mormon church for a little while, and that kind of fell through for various reasons, which big ups to my mom. Because like we started getting deep into it, and some things like started raising red flags for my mom, and she pulled us out.
Okay.
Even though the people who we were the people who in the church were very kind and very nice, but there were some things that looking back, I'm glad that she pulled us out of that church. And then nothing ever really happened. In high school, I decided I was saved.
Okay.
And got really into the straight edge church going thing. And I considered myself Christian for a while, in a way that was always very fake, I think. Or rather not fake, but forced.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I was around, the Christian community I was around was not, I was not aligned with them in any other way other than that I wanted to have faith.
Yeah.
Was really what it was. So I was first introduced to Hinduism when I studied abroad, and when we were in England. On our way to Scotland, our school organized a trip to attend a service at a Hindu temple. And that was my first ever experience. That was my first ever touchstone with Hinduism. And it was this like really powerful moment for me. It was like, it really opened me up in a very sincere way that I didn't really understand at the time. And it would be years before I would consider myself Hindu. But that was like my first exposure. And that's when I like to say, that's when like Ganesh came to me and found me and was like, hey, this is the path and you're going to find me eventually, but let's just hang out for a little while. Because I very literally, as I was there, I was in the temple gift shop and I purchased a little Ganesha Murti.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept him with me forever, and I didn't really. It started with like very small rituals that I practiced sincerely, but without like any concern of like understanding myself as Hindu or anything. I recognized like Ganesh and as an aspect of God, and was like very interested in that, and that felt very important to me. And that eventually kind of grew and grew and grew until I really decided to take the plunge. And there was a couple external factors that helped me kind of move into that. Um, but I really took the plunge, and I started attending temple regularly. I learned like the proper, uh, some of the proper like ways of worshiping in a way that felt more formalized and less like I was just making it up as an individual. Things that were a part of Hindu systems and Hindu beliefs. And now's probably a good time for me to say that like I'm not an expert on Hinduism. I've been actively practicing for about 5 to 7 years, I think. And when I say actively practicing, I mean like daily pujas, keeping and tending to murtis in my home, attending temple, reading the Itihasas and the Puranas. And but I am not an expert on Hinduism. I am very much someone who has come to this path and is kind of like still very much actively learning about it. And also there is like no one way, like the umbrella of Hinduism is so large that you can like Hinduism isn't a religion really, right. It is a term for a huge swath of different religions, right. So to talk about it like it's one uniform thing is never going to work, right. So everything I'm saying is just sort of like my own experiences with different different experiences.
I think it's worth saying that it's really interesting to hear you talk about it like that, because well, one, just I want to say for you, because I don't think you and I ever really talked about this. It's like I have my own just extremely fascinating interest with Hinduism and India as a Indian subcontinent in general. I had the fortunate opportunity to spend about a month there in 2010, yeah, something like that, somewhere around there, and I got to travel there with some Indian Christians and study in Indian Christian seminaries. It's the Indian subcontinent is such an interesting place if you're interested in religion, because it's so religiously diverse, has such a long history of diversity of religion on the subcontinent, both within Hinduism itself, which you just described as being, it's not, people in the West don't understand, it's really not a single religion. The effort to sort of universalize Hinduism as a sort of a monolithic thing is a modern effort. It's like a recent effort in certain groups, but that's like Indian politics really. But like, also having this long history of tolerance for Christians that have been there for thousands of years, and people don't think of India as a Christian country. Even to talk about India as a country is so weird. It's like there is nothing more complicated that I know to talk about than India and Hinduism and the subcontinent. It's just like so. But I was going to say that you talked about being like you're not an expert on Hinduism. Man, it's really interesting to me as a Christian priest, because I'm just thinking about the fact that like I don't think probably most people who are Christians that I know, out there probably practice Christianity to the degree that you practice daily your Hinduism. It's a question. I wonder if people would say like see themselves as experts on Christianity because they grew up Christian or whatever, even if they didn't and they converted to it. It's really interesting that you approach it with that humility of like, oh, I'm not an expert on this. Christians certainly don't talk about Christianity the same way you're talking about being Hindu.
And that is one of the reasons that I didn't feel at home among Christians, particularly in the West, like, or my, I don't know, the Christian circles that I was around. Like, I have since come to discover that there are lots of people who are like really critical of their faith and really engaged with their faith in Christianity. But for a long time, I never saw that, and I didn't feel like that was the go-to in America. I think the evangelism in America really turned me off of, really made it difficult for me to, aside from I mean, there's so many things that like eventually led me to Hinduism, but for sure the cultural aspect of American Christianity, like the average American Christian,
Yeah.
not to disparage anybody, but I think like we see a lot of what having a religious faith in political power in the United States has sort of done to the faith. I don't think that's terribly inflammatory to say. And that really made a lot of things difficult for me.
Yeah. Well,
Understandable. And
Go ahead.
I mean, Ben and I both grew up in Quakertown too, so I feel like we probably know a lot of the
oh yeah, I didn't tell our listeners that we all grew up in Quaker.
the circles that you're talking about. I feel like we probably know.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that, like, so I went to India to teach for about 7 months. And that was pretty early on in the period where I was like, all right, that's it. I'm going to start calling myself a Hindu. I'm going to start like really committing myself to this faith as like a proper part of, as a proper faith, and something that I'm committed to and studying and you know, working on a relationship with God. And until then, I had been like very much like, oh, well, Hinduism is just like so much more accepting. It's so much more open than Christianity. And then I went to India and I spent some time with India. And while I still think, you know, Hinduism is a very open and welcome religion, once you see, I think living in India for a while showed me that anytime that a religion is in the political majority, it's going to be used, it's going to be weaponized. And like what you see with the Hindu right in India right now it is very frightening. And it made me realize, it did very much show me that, you know, what happens in America is not unique to America or Christianity, that this is something that like is universal. Anytime that people can use religion as a weapon, it's going to be a powerful tool.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of how we can transition that into some of the other things I want to talk about, because we could talk about just that for the next hour. But I am curious how all the experiences you've described sort of shape. Well, let's talk about world design a little bit. So you and your wife Diana design world build together for Heart Points. You've done 2 different campaigns, right? Two, that's accurate, isn't it? Yeah. And so 2 different worlds. And I don't know another, so I won't say it that way necessarily, because there's lots of stuff out there I'm not aware of, but I'm very impressed with the 2 of you, the level of care you put into world building, especially with sort of, we're gonna present a world with a culture, and like you care like a lot, it seems, to the cultural presentation of these worlds that you're playing in. And so I'm just curious how, you know, like what your thoughts are about that, what kind of intentionality there was behind that, where you see that springing from in your own life experience.
Wow, that's a good question. Well, thank you. I'm glad that those feel intentional and they feel fleshed out to you. That means a lot to me. I think so. Our first campaign was set in a plains city called Seguranza, and it was one of 5 cities that were founded by imperialist powers in this desert steppe. And our current series is called Blood Gold, and it is set in a world called Seoul, where that is much more pastoral and kind of deals with people just living their lives kind of in this magical, slightly sword and sorcery setting. So I think we have said before that kind of what happened with Seguranza was very accidental accidental in a lot of ways. I had initially kind of planned this very basic dungeon crawl, explore stuff, what like fight gods and demons and like go exploring. And then over the course of the game, there were a couple things that happened. Namely that Diana's character, Constance, got really involved in the politics of Seguranza. And it was something that we were both interested in, and we weren't like trying to make any statements or anything, because I think that's because I don't think either of us are qualified to make statements. But we were both feeling a lot of feelings about what was going on during the Trump administration, particularly with regards to the rights of immigrants, because Diana is the daughter of immigrants. And it kind of turned into this adventure about exploring what it's like to live in a city that is actively being designed against you, and how you can fight back against that in a very not in a realistic way, in a very power fantasy way. This resistance against when the cards are stacked against you, when the system is actively trying to put you down, picking up a sword and shoving it through their chest. Because that was something that we both needed at that time. And I'm glad that felt fleshed out to you, because we were very much just kind of like figuring it out as we went. And I think it had I was really happy with the results. Blood Gold, I really wanted to do like a hex crawl, and I'm a big fantasy nerd. I am a big I like writing, I like world building, and I really kind of just I like stories in which people are people, I guess. I'm just very excited to, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, is like I don't feel like I'm hitting it in Blood Gold the way I was hitting it as like a GM.
Okay.
I'm like really struggling with Ryutama as a system for like encouraging me to do different things. I feel like I keep like falling back on combat, and I'm like really frustrated by that. But Diana is like really having a great time meeting people and like connecting with NPCs and doing stuff. So yeah, it's been very interesting. I kind of started rambling. I don't know if I actually answered your question.
did.
I'm sorry.
You did. It's interesting you say that, like, because there's like it just makes me think, as somebody that also does podcasts, and Blaine, you can maybe comment on this too. There's like both your player, you're a GM, right? So like if you're a GM and you're running for a podcast, you're thinking about both your player and the listener simultaneously pretty much all the time.
Yeah, it is it's a weird skill set to learn. And especially like I've been GMing for 22 years or something like that, and I've been GMing for podcasts for like 3 or 4 years,
right? Exactly.
And it is an entirely different skill set. And when you like, I think part of you is like, oh, how hard could it be? Like, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just hitting a record button before I do it. But when you have an audience that is actively listening to the stuff you're doing, it's very different. Just the way you construct stories, like you need to have story beats work a little bit differently. You need to like make sure that it's interesting to listen to, because like, in a standard session with your friends, everyone loves like the shopping session. But like you can't do a shopping session as an episode of a. You
can if you.
You can.
Well, I was gonna say you can if you're the McElroy brothers, because
true. If you have if you have if you have Fantasy Costco to go to, then yes, I suppose you can.
That is like one of the things that made that game really good. Is it took things that all of us who've been playing for a long time do all the time, and it made them fun to listen to. It didn't remove them, which is, anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole, because I think podcasts that don't do that are also fine. Like I like lots of different actual plays, but Blaine,
yeah.
Blaine, I'm curious, as far as like your own world building, because you've done lots and lots of world building, and I'm just curious if there's ever intentionality as to like, or if it either intentionality or maybe it just sort of permeates. Like, do you feel like your own sort of spiritual history, your own sort of religious history impacts world building? Does it kind of go without saying to build a mythology when you do world building? Is it personal, or is it just like part of when you do it?
I mean, I think it is. There's definitely an intentionality there, and this is an interesting. And I feel like this is something both you and I do a lot, Ben. And it's interesting. Like, I use the negative aspects of Christianity a lot as influences on, like, 'cause I find faith as a villain interesting, and Christianity has done a very good job of being a villain at various times throughout its 2,000-year history. That, like, I feel like I use it more. I use more of the negativity of Christianity in my world building.
Yeah. Or at least people who wear the label of Christian, or put the label of Christian on themselves when they're in power, or use the label of Christianity, put the cross on the shield, so to speak.
Yeah.
When they are in power, to use that for I don't know if I would say that looks like real Christianity at all. Enough even resembles it mildly, but it doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is cultural Christianity, right?
Yeah, what you see, the loudest voices of Christianity, and often tend to be some of the most negative voices of Christianity. But there's something, and I run a lot of horror, and there's something supremely terrifying about a horror villain that uses faith, whatever that faith is, as justification for what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, a perfect example of that is Dogs in the Vineyard, right? Which kind of like
Yes.
inverts that a little bit, because you are the villain who is using faith to justify. And Dogs in the Vineyard is just one of the most beautiful games that I've ever played, and also the most horrifying. I think only second to like Bluebeard's Bride have I played a more upsetting game than Dogs in the Vineyard.
That is to this day one of my favorite You Are Not Alone episodes, is when I got to play Dogs in the Vineyard with Ennis Bash. Like, it is just supremely terrifying, particularly because, like you said, Zach, like, you are the villain in that. Like, you are the one enforcing God's policies, which often leads you to do terrifying things.
I have not gotten to play that game, and I feel like that's a crime. I'm really disappointed.
It's so good.
Especially as somebody whose job it is to enforce God's policies. No, it's
true.
Not exactly.
You could learn a lot from God's watchdogs.
It's not. I have definitely, though. Yeah, I mean, like, now that you pointed that out, Blaine, I'm thinking about how often I've used religious villainy in games, and it's more than I even realized. I was like, do I really do that much? And I thought about it, and like, I really have.
I feel like it's a trope, both of us, and we feed each other on that.
Sure.
I mean, we play together a lot, so
sure. Or even had players who want to use religious zealotism as villains, like they're playing evil characters and they want to be religious zealots as an evil trope. It's a form of zealotry that we're really familiar with. It's not the only way to be a zealot, right? But so often but it's the one we're probably most familiar with, right? Don't you think? And being a zealot can go so badly, and I think that's why it's a trope.
It's really interesting to me, because now I'm realizing that I don't think I use, because I love the trope of, like, organized religion as the villain, or religious zealotry as the villain, and I don't think I ever use it in my tabletop RPGs, now that I'm thinking about it. I don't think, and I might need somebody to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I don't think the villains in Seguranza ever justify what they're doing through religion. One of the gods in Seguranza is a dick, but he's not evil. And I have like 2 villains in adventures that I've written that are evil cultists, but it's not like organized religion is bad. They're just like they worship an evil god because like those are like OSR games. Like like I have like a Torchbearer adventure that has like an evil shaman. So but everything else that I do, like Blood Gold, religion is very positive. Most of my games, religion are very positive. Hungry Knowles Eat the Rich, organized religion is portrayed negatively. Now that I think about it.
So it's interesting, and I wonder what it says, because I don't want to just like use religion and I don't think I've just done this. I mean, as a player, I've played religious characters that are genuinely virtuous, that religion genuinely causes them to be virtuous and to live virtuously, and I've seen people do that. So don't get me wrong; it's not as if I think like religion has just been villainous in the games that I've experienced, but like I certainly do want to see like positive presentations of religion in the worlds and games that I play in. But what I'm wondering is if maybe I don't have the answer to this. I'm wondering if maybe I'm working out my own religion when I do that, and that's really what it is. It's me struggling against my own history, struggling against my own background, my own previous like ways I've expressed religion in dark and villainous ways, like the way that I've used religion as to have power over other people in the past and things like that. And I'm like cathartically exercising those demons out. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But it strikes me that is one of the ways in which religion can appear in games, is like us processing our own spiritual experience like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I would say it's hard to do positively because you run the risk of being preachy or like trying to convert if you're trying to sing the praises. But there's so much there in ritual and love and exploration of self and of the world around you that is just ripe with opportunity for tales of heartwarming, of kindness, of joy, and I don't think it is seen enough. And like one of my white whales of game design is to make a game that you are religious and kind, is something that I really want to do. And I actually I just played a game of Golden Sky Stories with Enrique Cintrone of the Fruits of the Spirit podcast, which is a fantastic podcast about queer people of color and their relationship with religion. I highly recommend it. And I just played a game of Golden Sky Stories where Enrique played as a shrine attendant who needed to help the town when a god went missing during an important ceremony. And it was really refreshing to play this game, and it'll be out on Hardpoints eventually. I'm trying to edit it on my own, and it's going terribly. But it was really refreshing to play this story where religion isn't, in relationship with God, isn't used as a weapon or even as a shield, but just as like another relationship among people in the town. And it was really refreshing and really wonderful. And I don't see enough of that expressed in games, I don't think. I want more.
Yeah, I love those kind of stories. And it's interesting, like as a GM, I tend to focus negatively on religion. But as a player, like one of my favorite tropes is the the follower of the suffering god who's just trying to do kindness.
Right.
I don't know how many times in Dungeons and Dragons I've played a cleric of ill matter.
Right.
But it's tough because in games like Dungeons and Dragons, there's so much focus on combat that playing like a truly like kind pacifistic character just doesn't fit into the model of the game.
Oh, you think so? Yeah, I guess it. Yeah, interesting.
It's tough, and like you can like, you know, do non-lethal damage and knock them unconscious and turn them into the local authorities, but like that just it still focuses heavily on combat in a way that like that kind of character, like, you know, I want to see a story about like a shrine servant who's just like the whole shtick is going around like feeding people and doing kindness and not fighting. But you need the right system for that, like a system that focuses heavily on combat. Just unless everyone is in for that type of story, like it's just not going to work.
Yeah, because D&D is primarily about committing violence. Like that's what I feel like I keep saying like a lot of like controversial things, and I feel weird that might be the most controversial thing that I've said so far, is that like D&D is about committing violence. And even if you are the pacifist priest who like is committed to only healing your party members, you're still helping them to commit violence, and usually terrible violence.
Yeah, you're still part of the system of violence. And like from a role-playing perspective, like how do you justify that? Like, I don't care if you go and kill those goblins, but like I'm just gonna hang back and watch while you do it. Like, no, that does, like a truly pacifistic character isn't gonna be able to handle that. Like, you're not traveling with a group of adventurers who do violence if you abhor violence.
Yeah. Which, if y'all read the PDF of Wanderhome that came out, are y'all familiar with Wanderhome?
No.
I haven't read the PDF yet. I know we've talked a lot about it in the last couple of weeks on Discord, and I'm real excited.
A new-ish outside belonging game from J Dragon. It is absolutely beautiful. No combat at all. You're just animal folk wandering from town to town, doing good deeds and kind of looking for your own physical and or emotional home, and is super spiritual in a lot of ways, I think. Not least of all because there is a character who carries around, who collects tiny and forgotten gods and carries them around and like helps them kind of come to terms with the fact that they've been forgotten. And it's just like so good, so beautiful.
I love that so much.
I need to play that game so badly.
So, well, speaking of tiny but maybe not forgotten gods, I do want to talk about Tiny God. And before you came on, we were talking about how Blaine and you have both made micro RPGs that are both about mindfulness, except for Blaine's it's about your skeleton trying to escape from your body. Yours is a little different from that. Do you want to tell people about what Tiny God is?
Yeah, so Tiny God is a little game that fits on a business card, and it helps you. It asks you to build it gives you a couple prompts to build a tiny god, and the premise is that you have a tiny god who's with you, and they are of something small. Their dominion is something very small and very very localized, and when you and they don't understand the world. They don't understand you, but they want to understand you. And so whenever you see the card, the god has a question for you. And you can see the card on accident, or you can pull out the card when you need to talk to the tiny god. And the god wants to understand what's going on around you. And you can explain to the tiny god what is happening. And the tiny god is going to have a lot of trouble understanding. They're not going to get it. This is not really a game. It's not a game at all, actually. It's just kind of an exercise in exploring why you get hung up on things. And it's very much based on my own experiences with OCD. What Tiny God is really about. It's about my OCD and getting like stuck on things and trying to work through them. And so, or rather, I should say, it is born both out of my OCD and my Hinduism, because Hinduism does have you have a very personal relationship with God. in God's many forms. The different devas of Hinduism are like very personal, to the point that when you're performing home puja, you are basically treating God as if they have entered your house, and you are treating them like a guest in your home. And I would sometimes use that opportunity to kind of like think through what was bothering me. It was an activity that I would do frequently. I would say in 2015, I was dealing with a lot of anger around some political issues that were brewing, and I used my time with God to like talk about why I was angry and figure out why I was actually angry and what I could do about it. And that's where that's really where Tiny God came from. Was this like getting stuck on loops?
No, that's so cool. I mean, I'm almost not so jealous isn't the right word. I am envious, I guess, is sort in a sense, your ability to take that experience and then translate it to something as creative and wonderful and beautiful to share with other people as Tiny God is, because I've certainly been there, where like my relationship with God is about processing anger, frustration. I can think of a particular time in my life where I was going through something really hard, and my relationship with God during that time was what I see in the biblical Psalms in the Old Testament is like for part, not all of, but part of the Psalms, which is like, what in the world is going on, God? Like, WTF? Like, have you really just abandoned me? Like that kind of expression. Like that's what my relationship with God was, and like that, it's very personal. I love that you say it's personal. I think that's missing from Christians too. A lot of times is like one of the things I do like about Hinduism is because of the way it expresses God. Like, you can have this sort of like experience of God as person, which Christianity ought to have. Like Christianity has, first of all, not only is Jesus a human person, but also like Christians in Orthodoxy believe that God is three persons, right? In one, but three persons. And a lot of times I find myself talking to people about like, if God, we don't treat God in Christianity a lot of times like a person, because a person like Zach or Blaine, like if I'm talking to you guys, like if I say something to you, I have no idea what you're going to say back to me. Like truly, like I might be able to guess at it, but like, I don't know, because you're your own person. And if I say something to upset you, you might lash back out in anger. Or if I say something, but Christians, I think, don't expect to have that kind of relationship with God. Am I making sense? I think that personalness, that personness is missing a lot of times in Christianity.
That was definitely something I felt in my experiences with Christianity is I wanted a more personal relationship with God, and I didn't feel like I was getting it out of Christianity. And that was actually like when I decided like I couldn't be Christian anymore, I was like, this is not going to work for me. I went through a period where I was like trying to force myself to be atheist, and that was not great for my mental health at all. And I think I also want to say, like, I have the utmost respect for everyone on whatever faith path that they are on. I'm not trying to disparage like atheism or Christianity, just that they simply were not right for me.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I don't want to sound to people like I'm Christian bashing, because I'm certainly not. Like,
Oh yeah.
I first of all think there's a diversity of, just like we're talking about diversity in Hinduism, there is certainly a huge diversity in Christianity for sure, and that's worth honoring that. But also, like, I'm not meaning to Christian bash. Like, I think that what sometimes is lacking in Christianity is that personalness we're talking about, and I think it's not. In certain expressions I see in my own experience of Christianity where I am, right? So we all live in we actually, the three of us all happen to live in basically the same geographic area and are from the same town. Like we're very local. So I'm saying in my very local experience of Christianity, I see oftentimes that's lacking. And I do sort of see it largely lacking in Christian culture in North America, but it's certainly not lacking in Christianity historically or, around like in different expressions of it. So it's certainly so I'm not meaning to Christian bash. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally get that, and I would not expect that from you. And anyway, given your position, I would not think that you were.
Yeah, but like a lot of us do Christian bash. Like I hear Christian bashing among colleagues. I hear Christian bashing among Christians in leadership. So I just want to make sure I'm clear to people listening, because sometimes it can come across that way. I think especially from more left-leaning Christians, like, oh, we Christian bash. Like, I'm not meaning to. I just see that as being something that I wish there was more of.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like I'm trying to speak a longing out there.
And and that makes me think of over the Easter holiday, I got this comic called "The Harrowing of Hell" by Evan Dom, and it's about the harrowing of hell. It's about like Jesus's experience in hell in between when he died on the cross and when he was resurrected, and that is so often glossed over in mainstream Christianity in the United States. It's ignored, and this comic like really humanizes Christ and like treats him as a person who is going through hell and like trying to make sense of hell. And when I finished reading it, I was like, if I had read that like 10 years ago, I might still be a Christian. Honestly, I might have worked harder to find a denomination that worked for me. But I didn't. And so I'm very confident with where I am now. And like I have a lot of appreciation for Christ. And I think different different sampradayas, different schools of Hindu thought treat Christ differently. Because like so much of Hinduism, so much of historical Hinduism is based around like looking at other religions around the region and being like, okay, well, how does this relate to what we know in the Vedas? How does this relate to what we know in the Puranas? And like incorporating it. So it's not unusual that people looked at that Hindus looked at Christianity and were like, okay, well, what is this? How does this relate to what we know and what we believe? And so one of my favorite temples I attended this beautiful, or I used to go to this beautiful Shiva temple in India that was like right down the street from me. And when you walked in, the first thing that you would see was the Shiva lingam in a little recess on the floor. But if you looked up, there was a portrait of Christ on the doorway. And there wasn't anything else like Christian in the temple. It was all like traditional like Hindu murtis. But I always thought it was so interesting that there was this portrait of Christ above the door, because that's just not like, that's not unusual. You might see like an auto rickshaw driving down the road with like Christ on one side and Vishnu on the other. Like that's it, the amalgamation of religion in Hinduism was also like one of the things that was really interesting to me. And that's something that I have, going way back to world building, that's something that I've tried to like incorporate into Blood Gold, our current campaign, because that's super fascinating to me.
Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
About Blood Gold, or about
sort of about what's fascinating to you about that and how you see that translating over.
So the Blood Gold has like a big, I would say Blood Gold, the world system and like the religious system in the world of Blood Gold is like very based on some of my ideas about Hinduism, in that in the setting that we've built, there are these regional deities that called Pega that are very similar and are like, the name Pega is not very original because it sounds a lot like Deva, like the gods of Hinduism. And these Pega are very, most of them are very small, regional, localized spirits that are connected to something physical. And that's very different than a lot of like current Hindu thought. But the Pega also are living things in their own right that have relationships with the people around them. They are just like the spiritual embodiments of things that people interact with in the world. And that to me is really interesting. The idea that you can have a relationship with an incorporeal concept or have a relationship with something that is important to you, but that you cannot interact with in our plane, in our current way of thinking, is really powerful to me. I have like really terrible FOMO. I'm like terrified of missing anything. And so this idea of like having alternate routes to connect with things is really, really engaging to me and really powerful to me. So that's kind of how that came across in Blood Gold. Ben, I think you're still muted.
Thank you. I forgot to unmute myself here. I was gonna say that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's like a really interesting intentionality to, like, the fact that you're putting that, like, that kind of intentionality of world building, of taking these spiritual concepts and then sort of translating them over into. I want to have an opportunity to do that kind of world building. I don't feel like I have. That I do lots of world building. I just haven't done that kind of world building. I haven't done any kind of fancy. And I'm also thinking a lot about our conversation last night because last night I streamed No Avatars Allowed, and we talked about Morrowind, and so I've been playing Morrowind again. This is like an aside. I feel bad distracting us with this, but I'm playing Morrowind again for the first time in like 20 years or whatever, and holy crap, that is a world that they took the time to flesh out. It's nuts. It's nuts. And it makes me want to like do some of that world building.
Any Elder Scrolls game, like whenever I play it, my immediate thought is I want to build an entire world.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something really, I wonder what that is about like human beings, and I guess it's specifically the kind of human beings that like to do this, but human beings that makes us want to express out. So this is like, if I was going to talk about this theologically, I might say that a creator has, because we're made in the image of a creator that creates, that we are also creative and have the same desire to sort of birth worlds out of us creatively. But that's if I'm speaking my own personal theology of that.
But I mean, that for me is very much the case. Like, so much of my spiritual life is based in my creative life. Like, I always feel the closest to God when I am creative, whether that's writing poetry or, you know, playing in punk rock bands or writing games or running games. Like, that act of creativity echoing the creativity of God, I think has always been for me the strongest connection is forged in those moments.
I feel like there's a lot of game design potential for this for what we're talking about right now. I am curious. We've gone like over 6 o'clock by like a significant amount, which is okay. I was sort of like knew that was happening as we did it, and we had our technical glitch in there. I wanted to just throw out there for folks who are still here in the chat, because we got folks here. If you want to throw questions in there, I would love to be able to take some time for them if there's any out there. You know, if you have any questions, I'd love to engage some of you in the chat. It's the one thing I wish I could have done more of last week, because we had such really rich conversation in the chat last week when we had Alex on. And I'd like to be able to do that if there's any questions. But, yeah, I don't know. While we're waiting to see if people take that and come up with questions, just trying to think of some. Yeah, I don't know, Blaine. In your own, so you talking about Born in Briar and Blood. I don't know. Do you see, like, in the future of your own game design? Do you see sort of taking any of this kind of intentionality we're talking about and putting it into game design?
I mean, there's definitely, I have 2 games in development that are kind of sister games, that one of them doesn't have violence at all and is actually set in the aftermath of violence, where you are returning to your homeland, which has been eradicated, to exorcise the ghosts of the dead. And then I have another game that incorporates violence, but it, like, tries to look at the kind of spiritual damage that violence does, or the personal damage that violence does to people who have to perpetrate violence. And so, like, the system itself, like, when you use violence, there is a larger penalty than when you don't use violence. So it forces you to ask the question of, like, is this a moment where violence is my only option? So a lot of my, like, own personal, like, anti-violence, which is born out of my faith, is certainly a large part of game design. And I recently had an idea for a, like, cyberpunk game, where, like, the megacorps are based around, like, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and using kind of, like, the concept of faith virtues as what you use to try to overcome these mega corporations, as opposed to just, like, kick in the door and shoot everything, which, like, is fun in a cyberpunk genre. But, like, there are enough great cyberpunk games out there that, like, I don't need to add to the standard cyberpunk mythos, I don't think. But, like, finding that, like, looking at that, like, what is ultimately evil about the, like, cyberpunk future, and how we can stand up to that in ways that aren't just violence.
Yeah, that just makes you think. I keep coming back to, so this is going to probably keep happening now that we're streaming No Avatars a lot on Thursdays, and then I'm doing this on Fridays, which just also makes you think about last night on No Avatars a lot. Josh was talking about a book he's working on that has to do with dystopian futures, and about how his argument is sort of that a lot of times in dystopian stories, it's like the things that we would owe the gods we give to government or corporation in dystopian stories. So governments and corporations sort of take the role of the gods, and that's sort of what fleshes. But anyway, that's all on the side. I don't see any questions emerging in the chat. We sort of can still take some if they do pop out. I do want to be cognizant of the time, just because I want to honor my guests here, and also I think Blaine has something else at 6:30, so I should probably.
I mean, it's evening prayer for our church, so I feel like if it's late, having the excuse of streaming with the priest
exactly
feels like a legitimate reason to be a couple minutes late on evening prayer.
Exactly. I feel like since like, I'm the one who decides when it is, it's not a big deal. But I do want to give you guys a chance to plug whatever you want. So, Zach, do you want to just talk to us a little bit about finding you out there, plug some things, whatever it is you want?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at ZWGarth. You can find my game design at zwgarth.itch.io. And you can find my podcast as Heart Points. So we are Heart Points on Spotify and iTunes. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud at Heart Points Pod. So yeah, I think that's everywhere that you can find me and all the weird things that I do.
Awesome. How about you, Blaine?
So folks can find me on Twitter at notalone_horror. That's kind of the easiest way to find me. You can find the podcast at youarenotalonepod.com. If you want to imagine your skeleton trying to escape from your body, you can go to blainecmartin.itch.io. Born of Briar and Blood is available in Gauntlet Codex Hunger, which is available through DriveThruRPG. And Territory Blues, my Lovecraft-esque scenario, is available at jeffstormer.itch.io. Jeff and I wrote that together, and he is the money man for that one. So,
well, I would just want to thank you guys both for coming on the show and being my second ever guests here on this new stream. Thank you for being with me. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. It's nice to get a crew of Quakertown folks together.
Honestly, didn't think of that when I planned it. I don't know how I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it. but it just didn't. It just never really crossed my mind. It was not part of my sort of intentionality or design here. But I'm excited about future streams. If folks, if you only caught the end of this, you can check it out on YouTube. You can watch the entirety of it. If you just find That Gamer Priest on YouTube, you can watch the whole video. Maybe that's. And then there's the weird thing is maybe you're watching it there right now, and this is the future. That could be. But yeah, so a couple of things here as we're winding down this week's show. Thank you for starting your weekend out with us. If you are live with us here, I really appreciate you choosing to start your weekend out here on this happy hour stream. So you can join me again tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on All Ports Open's Twitch channel. So that's All Ports Open here on Twitch. I'm going to be on the aptly named Apon Morning Show at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want more of this, it's a completely different thing. It's going to be totally different than this. You can join us on the Apon Morning Show. It's going to be Josh, Megan, Shannon, Chris, and me, our sort of Apon crew. And who knows what in the world we're going to talk about. We're going to get into tonight. Probably trouble. Like I said, if you only caught a little bit of this or you caught the end, some people have did that last week. It is on my YouTube. You can subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything, or you can find All Ports Open Network on YouTube also. And sorry about the dog. And all of our videos, all of our shows are on there. I just want to pitch one more thing while we have folks, which is I have been GMing a masks campaign on the Apon Plays podcast. And the finale of that is next week. So if you find the Apon Plays podcast and you haven't listened to it, you can listen to the entirety of that arc on there as of next week. The finale will drop on Tuesday. And then next Wednesday on the Apon Twitch feed, we're going to be doing a Q&A rap show special and announcement event I'm really excited about. So yeah, that was my sort of cleanup here at the end of the show. So once again, thanks all you out there for watching the show tonight, for being with us. Sorry for my enthusiastic dog at the end. It was actually, to be honest with you, I'm just proud of her. I'm just proud that if it wasn't for my wife Mel and my family, she probably would have started doing this way sooner. But anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope to see you again later on tonight. And
night, everyone.
Bye.